Yes.
Herschel.
Yes.
I'm tired. I wanna go home.
Okay.
Nap with my tail.
It's a weird thing to say.
My dog.
Yeah, I know. That's what's weird.
That's my dog.
That's why it's weird.
Totally fine.
It's true.
It is true.
I'm calling him up. I'm calling him up for Hogwarts.
Right. That's so cool. Dylan was here once. Two of the greatest. Just like make some comment about the band on the run.
All right, so Don, you'll decide if you want this to be your own bottle or if you're going to share.
Oh, I'm going to share.
Okay, great. So I brought the shot glasses.
Yeah.
Just in case.
She was
That's
that kid.
it, man. Yeah.
She was that kid in Cincinnati.
And beyond.
Right? Every class had that kid.
Hey, we were all raised properly.
Marty Janals, yeah.
Yep. No.
Okay, Hannah's opening.
Ready?
You ready, Don?
Yes, ma'am.
All righty. Welcome, everyone. We'll begin our Minchah service to begin the home stretch of this marathon day. We're so glad to have you here with us. The Minchah service is about holiness. So many elements of the service. We read a Torah portion, Kiddushim, about holy acts and holy behaviors. We hear the story of Jonah. We hear stories of holy Jewish martyrs, these sacred figures in Jewish history. It's a time of day when, though Yom Kippur is not over just yet, the sun has started to slip a little lower in the sky. The shadows start to grow a little longer. And we start to slip back to normal thoughts, thinking ahead to our normal lives, to break fast. Our minds start slipping out of this holy, sacred state that we've been in. But we remain here with a purpose. It reminds me of when you go to visit family for a holiday, or you're having a wonderful meal at a friend's house, and you're having such a great time, and your parents or your siblings say to you, "Why don't you just stay another day? Why don't you catch a later flight?" You're enjoying dinner at a friend's house, and they say, "Why don't you stay for another cup of coffee, another glass of wine? Just stay here a little longer in this special time." And this is what Minchah whispers to us. Just stay a little longer in this holy time, this holy place, immersed in this holy work, even as the sun starts to slip away. So while we're all here together for another couple of hours, let's stay there together in this holy place, in this holy time. We'll begin our service with the Torah service on page 329. Please rise.
Ki mitzion tetzei Torah, Ki mitzion tetzei Torah, Udevar Adonai mirushalayim, Baruch shenatan Torah, Torah, Baruch shenatan Torah, Torah, le'amo Yisrael, v'kedushato, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shmo, Gadelul Adonai iti, Unarom nach Shmo Yachtav. Yonit naseh lekol rosh.
This afternoon's Torah reading is my favorite portion in the entire Torah. It's chapter 19 in the book of Leviticus, and it is called the Holiness Code. I find it really interesting that in the middle of this book, which is almost completely about sacrifices and all the details surrounding them, we find this section on moral behavior. I always imagine that the Levites and priests who wrote this book are suddenly thinking, you know, we do all the work. We do all the sacrificing, we take care of the temple, and the people just stand around. We perform everything, but how does that help the average person connect with God and receive God's blessings? They need to do their part as well as we do ours. So they inserted the Holiness Code, which basically tells us that because God is holy, we too must be holy. And how do we do that? So if you look on pages 338 and 339, you'll see what it means to be holy as a Jew. Not to hate, not to gossip, not to stand idly by when blood is shed. Don't keep a worker's wages overnight. Don't steal or deceive people. Don't cheat people in business. Be kind to the stranger, and the list goes on, demanding ethical and righteous behavior in all our dealings with others, including v'ahavta l'rayacha kamocha, love your neighbor as yourself. To put it bluntly, to be holy as a Jew means to be a mensch.
For our first Torah reader, we are pleased to call Reese Fishman.
Baruch et Adonai Hamborach.
Baruch Adonai Borach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamborach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam. Asher Bahar Banu Mikol Ha'amim. V'na'atan lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Vayedaber Adonai El Moshe Lemor. Daber El Kol Adat B'nei Yisrael. Ve'amarta Alehem Kedoshim Tihiyu. Ki Kadosh Ani Adonai Elohechem. Ish imo ve'aviv tirachu. Ve'et shabtotai tishmorhu, ani Adonai Elohechem. Uve'kutzbehem et kitzir artzehem, lo techalech pe'at tzadha liksor, ve'lechet ketzirha lo telaket, ve'harmeha lo te'olel, Uferet karmeha lo telaket. Leoni velager ta'azov otam. Ani Adonai Elohechem. Lo tignovu velo tehachashu velo tishakru ish ba'amito. Velo teshaveu vishmi la shaker. Vehilalta et Shem Eloheha Ani Adonai. Baruch et Adonai Hambor. Baruch et Adonai. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher natan lanu Torat emet vehaye olam nata betuhenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten ha-Torah.
Amen. Now we're pleased to call his twin brother. There's a long line of twin brother stories in the Torah. This is a happy one. Owen Fishman.
Baruch et Adonai Hamvorach.
Baruch Adonai Borach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'na'atan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten ha-Torah.
Amen. The Torah reading continues at the bottom of 338 in verse 13.
Ota ashok et reacha velo tigzol. Lo talin peulat zachir itecha ad boker. Lo tekalel heiresh velibnei iver. Lo titein nichshol ve'aret hame Elohecha ani Adonai. Lo ta'asu avel b'mishpat. Lo tisach penei dal, velo tedal penei gadol, בצדק תשפוט עמידך. לא תלך רכיר בעמך, לא תעמוד על דם רעך, אני אדוני. לא תשנא את אחיך בלבבך, הוכיח תוכיח את עמידך, ולא תישא עליך חן. לא תקום ולא תיטור את בני עמך, ואהבת לרעך כמוך, אני אדוני. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen. We rise in honor of the Torah. וזאת התורה אשר עשה משה לבני בני ישראל, על פי אדוני ביד משה.
Please be seated. Okay, we're going to try something now, which is Rabbi Elkin and I, come on up here, are each going to give you our take on the Haftorah for this afternoon, which is the book of Jonah, a very famous story that most of us know, and hopefully we're going to provide some layers of meaning that you may not know of. Now, during the time that the Sanhedrin stood, which was the ancient Israelite equivalent to the Supreme Court, there were 70 members of the Sanhedrin. Some say 71 because that included the Rosh Sanhedrin, the head of the Sanhedrin. But in any case, whenever the Sanhedrin was debating a case, the youngest member of the Sanhedrin went first. Now, this honestly is true, and the reason given is that the other judges did not want the younger judge to be influenced by the opinions of the older judges. So, Rabbi Elkin, who is our newest rabbi, and we're so proud to have you on the bima with us, out of deference to you, would you please begin?
Of course, out of deference to you, I shall begin.
Yeah, that's a wise decision.
So the perspective that I have when I read the book of Jonah, because there are different reasons for what the book of Jonah means, and then also why do we read it on Yom Kippur as well. So for me, I think that it all hangs on this notion that Jonah is a story, that it is speaking truths about human nature and our desire to have relationships with God, but it's not necessarily literal. So I think if we understand then in that case that both Jonah, the main characters of the story are Jonah and God being a character in this narrative as opposed to the God we might understand to be the infinite force of the universe. This is a character in a story. The perspective that I take is that when Jonah flees, it's not an act of disobedience or failure of nerve or anything like that, but in fact it's because God doesn't set Jonah up for success. God is setting Jonah up to fail on his mission. And the first reason that I think that I take this perspective is the first verse of the book. We hear, "Now the word of the Lord came to Jonah, son of Amittai, saying, Go at once to Nineveh, that great city, and cry out against them, for their wickedness has come up before me." In every other prophetic message, prophetic call that we see in Tanakh, in the Hebrew Bible, there's always specifics about what the sin is. If you read Isaiah or Jeremiah or Ezekiel or Hosea, there's always a specific sin. The sin might be idolatry or arrogance or injustices against the orphan and the widow. But we don't get any of this. There's just a vague, they've been bad, you go deal with them. Now, in addition to this, Nineveh was also the capital of the Assyrian Empire. And if we look back at the empires of the ancient world, the Assyrians were some of the worst. They were punitive, they were extremely violent, they had a scorched earth policy in all kinds of ways. They not only wanted to destroy communities, they wanted to then crush any hope that you had of rising up. So this is where Jonah was going, without any specifics, to walk into the capital of this empire and tell these kinds of folks, you guys have been bad, and God is angry. And so I think when Jonah gets that call initially, he's not really, what is he supposed to do? Is he supposed to take that mission without the support, without the details provided by God? And then I think in addition, I would also add, and then I will defer, of course, that I think that God also doesn't show enough interest and compassion in human suffering. We see God, when Jonah gets thrown out of the boat and he's in the ocean, it says God provided a big fish, as though this was the miracle, a fish to swallow Jonah and then spit him out, that was the miracle. You couldn't send a ship, you couldn't send something else. But no, what was provided for was a giant fish to come and swallow you whole. And then finally, we see the last line of the story when Jonah is upset, and God says, "Why are you upset over this vine and your discomfort? Don't you know that all of Nineveh has been saved because of what you've done and because of the mission I sent you on? A city with more than 120,000 persons who do not know their right hand from their left, and also many animals." So God ends comparing animals, or cattle more literally, with 120,000 people. That to God, that's equivalent. And to me, I think that shows a real lack of compassion, a kind of disconnect from human suffering. And so in this way, I think we read this story not as a way to view obedience or God's ability to right our wrongs and help us on the right path, but I think it actually speaks to our fears, that we worry that when we confess our sins, that when we share all the ways that we are broken, that we've failed, that we've strayed, that we've fled in the last year, that God won't hear it, that God will be disconnected from it. And so whether or not this story answers our fears, I think it reflects that desire by us to be heard and to be healed.
Very nice. Completely wrong, but very nice. I'm not kidding. I'm kidding. I've a different perspective, and it's formed mostly out of the notion that the rabbis chose this story, and it is a story, to be the Haftarah, the afternoon of Yom Kippur, before Yizkor and before the gates are closing. So this is a kind of final sermon from the rabbis by choosing this as our Haftarah. And in my view, it's not God who fails here, it's Jonah. Rabbi Elkin is quite right. The Assyrians were the most sadistic people of the ancient world. When they had prisoners, the way they would march their prisoners around is they would put iron hooks through the cheeks of each prisoner, chain them all together and parade them around Nineveh. They would dismember their captives. They were absolutely brutal. I could go on. There's an article in Biblical Archaeology about the various ways in which the Assyrians tortured their victims. And God says to Jonah, I want you to go there and prophesy to them, and if they repent, I'm going to forgive them. And Jonah doesn't go. Yes, it's possible Jonah doesn't go because who would, right? Who would march into that kind of environment to prophesy? It would be very unlikely to get out alive. It would be like a rabbi marching into Berlin in 1942, prophesying and saying, what you're doing is wrong. You need to repent, and then God will forgive you. So yes, part of it is Jonah's fear. But I have a different and a little bit deeper thought about it that has to do with why this Haftarah was chosen for us right now. My view is that Jonah, even more than being afraid for himself, he believed God. He believed that if he marched into Nineveh and prophesied and the people repented, that God would forgive them. And he didn't want them to be forgiven because of their brutality. He did not believe they deserved to be forgiven. Jonah harbored some degree of vengeance in his heart. Last night I talked about the single most important aspect of all of Judaism is to cut away the thickening of our hearts, to fight against our sometimes all too human nature to be hard-hearted, to be vengeful. It's hard to forgive. We don't want to forgive sometimes. We want to remain angry. We want to remain the victim. We want to remain self-righteous. We don't want to forgive sometimes, even if a person's repentance is sincere. And the Talmud teaches us that if a person is truly repentant and they ask you for forgiveness 3 times and you refuse 3 times, that person's sin is now upon you because you have engaged in the sin of vengeance and hard-heartedness. Yes, the repentance has to be sincere. It's unlikely it would have been. But I think this Haftarah is telling us we have to try. We have to try to heal the wounds in our family and in our friendships and in our world, because vengeance is the way to ruin. Now, I'm going to close with a joke, okay? Some of you may know this joke, but I think it's the perfect ending for this conversation that we've had. There are 2 business partners in a dispute. They decide they're going to go see the rabbi to settle the dispute. First business partner comes in, has a chat with the rabbi, explains the whole situation, and the rabbi says to him, "You know something? You're right." He leaves very self-satisfied. The other partner comes in, sits down in the rabbi's study, explains his perspective and the whole situation, and the rabbi listens carefully and says, "You know something? You're right." Both men leave very self-satisfied, and the rabbi's assistant comes in and says, "Rabbi, you told the first guy he was right, you told the second guy he was right. They can't both be right." And the rabbi looked at the assistant and said, "You know something? You're right."
Emily Levin, please come lead us in this Haftarah. The blessing before the Haftarah can be found on page 342. And the Haftarah text continues on the following pages. Okay.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'neviim tovim v'ratzah v'divrei hanemarim be'emet. Baruch atah Adonai habocher b'Torah uveMoshe avdo uveYisrael amo uvinvieh ha'emet b'tzedek.
Page 344 for those who wish to follow the Hebrew text.
Vayehi devar Adonai el Yonah ve'amitai lemor kum lech el Neilah ha'ir ha'gedolah ukra alecha ki altar ra'atam lefanai vayakam Yonah livrach tarshisha milifnei Adonai vayered yafa vayimsa aniyah b'tarshish vayiten sechara vayered ba lavo imahem tarshisha milifnei Adonai v'Adonai Heitil ruach gedolah el hayam vayehi sa'ard gadol bayam ve'haniyah hishva lehishaver vayirau hamelachim Vayzaku ish el Elohav vayatilu et hakelim asher baniyah el hayam lehakel me'alehem ve'yonah yarad el yarketei hasfina vayishka vayeradam vayikra ve'lav rav hachovel vayomer lo malecha nirdam ma melachtecha ume'ayim tavo ma'artzecha ve'mizeyam ata vayiseu et Yonah vayetilehu el hayam vayaman Adonai gadol livloa et Yonah vayomer Adonai ladag
The blessings after page 351. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam tzur kol ha'olamim tzaddik b'chol hadorot ha'el ha'ne'eman ha'omer v'yoseh ha'medaber u'mekayem shekol dvarav emet v'tzedek על התורה ועל העבודה ועל הנביאים ועל יום הכיפורים הזה שנתת לנו, אדוני אלוהינו, למחילה ולסליחה ולכפרה, לכבוד ולתפארת. על הכל, אדוני אלוהינו, אנחנו מודים לך ומברכים אותך, יתברך שמך, בפי כוחך תמיד לעולם ועד, ודברך אמת וקיים לעד. ברוך אתה אדוני, מלך מוחל וסולח לעוונותינו ולעוונות עמו בית ישראל, ומעביר אשמותינו בכל שנה ושנה. מלך על כל הארץ, מקדש ישראל. מלך על כל הארץ, מקדש ישראל. ביום הכיפורים.
Before we rise to return the Torah to the Ark, a brief observation, something to really celebrate. Both of our Torah readers this afternoon, Owen and Reese, and our Haftarah reader, Emily, were in the very first Mommy and Me class, then nursery school, then the elementary school, here at this campus, and now they're uplifting us all with their skill and their beauty and Torah. So we've done something very special, and you saw the result of it on this bima. Thank you. It's really, really something to see seedlings sprout such sweet and beautiful fruit. Let's all rise now as we return the Torah to the Ark.
Oh
now entering into a part of our service we refer to as the martyrology. Began originally by singling out 10 of the sages who were tortured and murdered between the 1st and 2nd century, and it has grown to include various martyrs and victims who sacrificed and suffered for their Judaism throughout the ages. And unlike some other traditions, this martyrology is not meant to aggrandize or deify. Quite the opposite. It is meant to humanize each and every person who has suffered for their faith. We fall subtly into that dehumanization, even as Jews, even when we talk about things like the Holocaust, when we say things like 6 million Jews died in the Holocaust. And that is not true. One person died in the Holocaust 6 million times. 3,000 didn't die on 9/11. One person died 3,000 times. Each person loved and cherished by others. That pain reverberating through an entire family. And so what we're going to do now is meant to remind us, all of us, of the individual people, just people, who have helped to perpetuate our faith and make it possible for us to be here together today. We begin the martyrology on page 520.
Rabbi Akiva was one of the 10, a man of piety and humility, spiritual leader of the Jewish community in the land of Israel, supporter of the Bar Kokhba revolt against Rome that began in 132 of the Common Era, who openly defied the Roman decree against assembling in synagogues and teaching Torah. Of Akiva ben Yosef, we are told, when the time came to say the morning Shema, the Roman executioners were combing Akiva's flesh with iron. And he said, "Hear, O Israel, Adonai is our God, Adonai is one." Akiva's students asked him, "Rabbi, even now?" And he said, "All my life I've been troubled that I could not obey this verse, love Adonai with all your soul, which is to say, love God even when God takes your soul. And I've wondered, when will I be able to fulfill this mitzvah? Now that the moment has come, how can I not obey?" Akiva stretched out the affirmation of the divine unity, the word echad, until the departure of his soul, and he died with echad upon his lips. Rabbi Akiva would teach Haviv Adam Shenivra B'Tselem. Human beings were made in God's image as an act of love.
Hanna Senic was a native of Budapest, Hungary, who made Aliyah to British Mandatory Palestine in 1939. It's written on page 527 if you'd like to follow along or just listen to the words. She made Aliyah in 1939, and 5 years later, having trained as a female paratrooper, Senish was one of 37 Jews who parachuted behind German lines in an attempt to rescue Hungarian Jews destined for Auschwitz. During her 3 months in Europe with partisan resistance fighters, she wrote the prayerful poem, "Blessed is the Match," Ashrei Hagvur. It was her last. Captured and tortured and having refused a blindfold, Hannah Senich was executed by Nazi firing squad in 1944 at the age of 23. She is buried in a special section of the military cemetery on Har Herzl in Yerushalayim, where the gravestones are arranged in the shape of a parachute. Ashrei Hagfor Shenisraf Hatzitz Lehavot. Blessed is the match consumed in a kindling flame. Blessed is the flame that softly burns in a heart's secret place. Blessed the hearts that, like flickering lights, knew to flutter and die without shame. Blessed is the match consumed in a kindling flame. Hillel teaches, Uvi makom she'ein anashim tishtadel lihiyot ish. In a place where there are no human beings, strive to be human.
Should not go unrecognized that today is the 50th anniversary of the Yom Kippur War, which was an existential threat to the Jewish people and to the state of Israel. And opened the world's eyes to the dangers in that very special and very troubled part of the world. Page 528. Daniel Pearl put himself in harm's way to inform the world of turbulent events. Pearl was an American journalist who covered ethnic strife and war in the Balkans, in Sudan, and in Iran. He was also a citizen of Israel. By 2002, Pearl was the Wall Street Journal's bureau chief in South Asia. While investigating Islamic terrorism in Karachi, Pakistan, he was abducted and executed by al-Qaeda terrorists. A videotape of his murder at the age of 38 preserves his last words. "My father is Jewish. My mother is Jewish. I am Jewish." Back in the town of Bnei Brak, there is a street named after my great-grandfather, Chaim Pearl, who was one of the founders of the town. South African writer and political activist Nadine Gordimer later reflected, "I am a Jew. To be a Jew, to be black, it is simply something you are. There is no pride in belonging to one particular race, color, or designation, and no denigration whatever in your identity. I was asked in a questionnaire what wish I would want to leave behind me in the world. My answer is recognize yourself in others. That would be the end of racism, which we know in all its pain and despicable horror. I believe that Daniel Pearl's last words, 'I am a Jew,' were an assertion of his inalienable right to recognition of the human oneness in his specific identity. He was the ultimate judgment on the senseless brutality that took his young life. Tzedek, tzedek, tirdof. Justice, justice you shall pursue. In just a moment, we're going to begin our Yizkor sermon and service, this service during which we call to mind the people we love who have died during this past year. And I'm going to ask that any of us here with small children who are not able to be absolutely quiet for the next half hour or so, to please remove the kids and take them. We're going to be live streaming this Yizkor service in the Browerman Elementary School library, so you'll be able to watch it there. Or please feel free to take them out into the hallway or wherever. But there are moments in this service where absolute quiet is what is required, and so please honor that and take about a half-hour break with your kids. And once the small children have exited, we're going to ask the ushers to please close the doors.
We begin Yizkor now. 2 years after my mother died, I went to a psychic. I was desperately seeking a way to connect to her, to feel her presence even though she was gone. My mother had dropped dead of a heart attack when she was 61 years old, without any warning. My whole family was devastated and in such deep grief we could barely function. Though time had passed, the big aching space in our hearts still pained us every day. Whenever my father used to come and visit me from Chicago, I would hear him sobbing every morning in the guest room. I don't really believe in psychics, but I was so sad and missing my mother so much, I decided, why not? What do I have to lose? 30 years later, I don't remember the psychic's name or what she looked like or even where I went to see her. What I do remember is that she took my hand and said, "I see your mother, and she is standing right behind you. She is here right now in this room, and she is saying that she loves you." And I remember thinking, oh wow, if only that were true. If only she were really here with me. I don't believe that the psychic saw anything, even though it made me feel good for a moment. But what I have come to understand is that in a certain way, my mother was standing behind me, and next to me, and in front of me, and that even though she was gone physically, her love still remains and continues to guide me and comfort me. Our Kabbalists and Hasidic masters teach that the body doesn't have a soul. The soul has a body. And when the body dies, the soul, the neshama, ascends to a higher spiritual realm that we call Olam Haba, the world to come. The connection between the living and the departed is not severed by death. Instead, the souls of our loved ones remain connected to us, offering guidance, inspiration, and comfort in times of need. We may not admit it, but sometimes many of us really do feel their presence. We have these moments when an undefinable, familiar, loving energy surrounds us and envelops us. And though our rational mind tells us that this is our imagination or wishful thinking, our divine spark, our soul, hints at something more powerful, that our neshama is connecting to theirs. I can't tell you how many people have confided in me that at a moment of joy or a moment of sorrow, they suddenly feel the unmistakable presence of their loved ones. I'm telling you, Rabbi, my father was in the room. Rabbi, I could feel my mother. I know she was there. Sometimes it happens spontaneously, and sometimes we can actually call them into our presence. I recently officiated at a wedding where the groom's father had passed away 5 years before. The groom had been very close to his father and wanted to somehow incorporate his dad into this joyful and important moment of his life. So he and his bride decided to set aside the first chair in the front row next to the aisle as his father's chair. As they explained to me, we wanted him to have a seat at our wedding. They decorated the chair with ribbons, placed his photo on it, and made sure that no one else sat there. And during the ceremony, I saw the groom glance over at that empty chair with tears in his eyes. Only it wasn't empty for him. He was feeling his father's presence and his blessing. I always feel my mother's presence when I light Shabbat candles. And not just her, but both my grandmothers and my bubby, my great-grandmother, who didn't die until I was 19. As I touch the match to the candles and gently wave my hands 3 times, I am not only inviting the Shabbat into my home, but also the women who came before me and loved me so much. At that moment, we are all lighting the Shabbat candles together, just like we used to when I was a child. And after the candle blessing, just like they did, I whisper a special prayer for all my loved ones, asking God to watch over them and protect them, asking God, and also asking those 4 extraordinary women whose souls I see in the flickering holy Shabbat lights. We feel them, and many of us also talk to them. How can we not? They had such a huge impact and influence on our lives. When my mother turned 60, my sister and I decided to surprise her with a birthday trip to London. She loved Jane Austen and Agatha Christie and everything English and had never traveled out of the United States. She was thrilled, and we had a wonderful 10 days seeing the sights, going to the theater, and having high tea in an elegant cafe. Little did we know that she would be gone a year later. I have this beautiful framed photo of the 3 of us standing in front of the Tower of London, and she looked so happy. I talk to that photo all the time. She died before I adopted my daughter, Lily, and how many times did I tell her I wish she were here to give me advice on how to raise my daughter, or that she could be at Lily's bat mitzvah or Lily's graduation. And then I would put my finger to my lips and touch her face in the photo and tell her how much I loved her. Sometimes our loved one talks to us. At moments of crisis or stress, we hear their voices, their advice, their warning, or their comfort. I have shared with a lot of you that my father was a big-time gambler and that he spent money like water. During our recent heat wave, the air conditioner in my car stopped working. Actually, it started blowing hot air, which is not great when it's 99 degrees. So I took it to be repaired, and it turned out that the warranty had just expired, and the repair was going to take 5 days and be really, really expensive. Needless to say, I was upset. I was really upset. I was so aggravated. And then suddenly, out of the blue, I hear my father's voice say to me what he would say always in times like this. Hey, it's only money. It's only money. The subtext being, nobody died, nobody's in the hospital, so what's the big deal? You win some, you lose some. And I actually started laughing. I shook my head and said out loud, "You're right, Dad, it's only money." And I felt a lot better. Recently, this new psychological theory came out about grief. It's called the theory of continued bonds. The main idea is that when dealing with grief and loss, closure is no longer a goal. Rather, we can continue our connection with those we have lost through a multitude of ways so that our bonds do not end, but instead transform into a new, different, but equally valid relationship. Well, I'm glad psychologists finally caught up with Judaism and the teachings that we've had for thousands of years. Who wants closure? We don't believe in closure. Why would we want to close the door on the most important people in our lives? That's why we have Yizkor 4 times a year and Yartzeit once a year to remember and connect and honor them. That's why we say Kaddish, to reach out to them and bless them, and according to our mystics, elevate their souls. That is why we name our children after them, to carry on their memory, but also to bring them back to life every time we say their names. My daughter's name in Hebrew is Ruth Rachel Ariel Bat Sarah Leah. Ruth for my mother Ruth, Rachel for my grandmother Rose, whom I was so close to, Ariel for my father Leonard, whose name was Aryeh, Bat, daughter of Sarah Leah, me, Susan Lee. 3 generations in one name. Ruth Rachel Ariel Bat Sarah Leah, a piece of poetry, an incantation, a summoning of those beloved souls at the most important times in my daughter's life, in all our children's lives, at their bris or baby naming, at their bar bat mitzvah, their weddings, and if God forbid we need to say a Misha Barak for them, we say those beautiful Jewish names, and those neshamas in the next world are right there with us. On the holidays, we make their kugel and plum cake and matzo ball soup using their recipes. We taste their food and are flooded with so many happy memories, and suddenly they are right there at the table with us. We tell their jokes, use their expressions, wear their talit, or use part of it on our wedding chuppah, and they are right there with us. We keep precious objects that belong to them, a kiddush cup, a menorah, jewelry, their books. For 25 years, I kept a pink lace dress of my mother's in my closet. I never wore it, but whenever I was feeling overwhelmed or sad or lonely, I would open the closet door and see it hanging there, still faintly smelling of Taboo, her favorite perfume. Sometimes I would gently touch the lace and remember all the times she wore that dress, and I would get strength and comfort. Yizkor means remember. We remember them and bless them and cry for them and miss them. And we can also invite them. We can welcome them into our lives with our hearts and souls and all our senses. Yizkor means remember. Perhaps they are also remembering us from a holy, transcendent place that is beyond our comprehension. The Kabbalah teaches that at the moment of passing, every positive thought, word, and deed that occurred during the person's life is concentrated into a pristine spiritual light. This light is revealed to the world and in the heavenly spheres, where it continues to shine and have an effect on those above and below. May the light of our loved ones shine upon us and brighten our lives with love and goodness and kindness and compassion. May their memories be a blessing to us, and may we follow their example and be a blessing to them. Amen.
There are stars up above, so far away we only see their light, long, long after the star itself is gone. And so it is with people that we love. Their memories keep shining ever brightly, though their time with us is done. But the stars that light up the darkest night, these are the lights that guide us as we live our days. These are the ways we remember. As we live our days. These are the ways we remember. We remember. יש כוכבים שאורם מגיע ארצה, רק כאשר הם עצמם עמדו בעינם. יש אנשים שסביב זכרם מאיר, אשר הם עצמם אינם עוד בתוכנו.
The 23rd Psalm is chanted or read at virtually every Jewish and Christian funeral in the Western Hemisphere. And one of the reasons is fairly obvious, because this is the psalm that talks about death as a beautiful, peaceful, everlasting existence, like lying in a green pasture beside a calm, still, beautiful lake. But there are deeper messages in this psalm, and I find them in the verse that you all know. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for thou art with me. Gam ki elech bege'ed salmavet lo irara. There are two very deep and powerful ideas in this verse. First of all, the poet tells us we walk through the valley of shadows. We don't stay there forever. Somehow, some way, our human urge for life helps us to walk back out into the light. And deeper still, the idea of grief being a shadow. If you think deeply about a shadow, no matter how long, no matter how dark, a shadow is actually proof of light. You cannot have a shadow unless the light is still shining. It's obstructed in the psalm by a mountain, but in our hearts, in our lives, by grief and loss. Grief is love obstructed. It is not love gone. And so with this beautiful message of hope in our ability to walk back out into the light and to somehow see the light even in the midst of the darkness of the shadow. We listen now to the words of the 23rd Psalm on page 593, and then we will read it in the English together on the top of page 594.
Adonai roi lo exar vinot esher yarbitseni al mei menuchot yenaleini
Let's read together in the middle of page 594. With God as my shepherd, I shall not want. The Eternal makes me lie down in green pastures, leads me beside the still waters, restores my soul, guides me in straight paths for the sake of God's name. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life,
and I shall dwell in the house of the Eternal forever.
We're going to read now the names of all the loved ones of our congregation and community who have died since last year's Yizkor. But we begin first with the names of all of the past rabbis of Wilshire Boulevard Temple and University Synagogue. Rabbi Abraham W. Edelman, Rabbi Sigmund Hecht, Rabbi Maxwell H. Dubin, Rabbi Edgar F. Magnin, Rabbi Henry Front, Rabbi Mark Goodman, Rabbi Alfred Wolf, Rabbi Harvey J. Fields, Rabbi Morley Feinstein, Rabbi Alan Freeling, Rabbi Samuel Chomsky, and Rabbi Harry Esrick. We add to their names all the names of our past presidents and board members of Wilshire Boulevard Temple and University Synagogue. Wolf Kalischer, I.W. Hellman, Harris Newmark, Herman Hellman, Casper Cohen, D.W. Edelman, George Mossbacher, Harry Holzer, S. Tilden Norton, George Pines, Anson Dreisen, Edward Lee Cosberg, Ralph Bookman, J. Robert Arkish, Sidney Ermis, Felix Judah, George Epstein, Robert Spencer, Raymond Gerson, Raymond Kurtzman, Eugene Bud Goodwin, Beverly Mitchell, Marion Smook, Yvonne Gottlieb, Lionel Bell, Samuel Rosenthal, Ralph Herzog, Leonard Rosen, Jack Rogers, Samuel Barbas, Reginald Robbins, Bert Klein, George Marinoff, Ernest Lever, David Siegel, Kermit Baumwell, Major Mindell, A. Paul Goldman, Henry Rose, William Gray, Judith Robbins, Frank Wolf, Jerry Werlin, and James Banks.
And now the names of those in our lives, our families, our community who died during this past year. Camille Adar, Rahale Aftalian, Lynn Alston, Joel Altschul, Max Aronson, Shirley Baskin Familian, Selma Bell, Judith Gabriela Benvenisti, Jacqueline Basharat Anvar, Sylvia Bialik, Janet Birkrant, Muriel Blankfurt, Rebecca Brode, Derek Brown, Norma Bubar, Virginia Bulkian, Seymour Cantor, Mark Cordova, Carl Kovitz, Kenton Crooms, Sam Davis, Charles Dolgner, David Dragon, Diane Edelstein, Judy Eder, Michael Edwards, Evelyn Eigler, Max Eisenberg, Roger Ensign, Norman Epstein, Manly Burton Feinstein, Norman Felsenthal, Paul Fisher, Jerome Jerry Franklin, William Friedkin, Linda Friedman, Linda Gatch.
Jay Gagerman, Judith Susan Gelb, Sharon Gertz, Latifa Gadushi, Sean Goes, Magdalena Gilbert, Donna Golden, Howard Goldfeder, Celia Goldman, Louis Goldman, Molly Gohl, Ron Gordon, David Green, Albert Greenfeld, Elaine Gumpert, Homer Gurin, Rowena Haas, Eric Hammermish, Mildred Hattenbach, Mary Diane Joyce, Harvey Caden, Ruth Caden, Ruth Kalin, Shuli Katz, Barry Roberts Katz, Robert Katzke, Allison Kellner Villamatter, Jeffrey Kessler, Joseph Joey Klein, Regina Kleiner, Dorothy Koenig, Phyllis Kogan, Ezra Cohen, Jim Cossack, Brian Kravitz, Sarah Rose Laffer, Ann Lauterbach, Ruth Levine.
John Levi Jr., Karen Levy, Sharon Levy Jaffe, Gabriel Lobel, Linda Lubitz, Joseph McCrom, Dora Mandel, Sid Mandel, Ron Mankoff, Sidney Gary Morantz, Philip Marber, Helen Mayer, Stuart Melvin, Lois Melvoin, Gloria Meyer, Judy Michaels, Judith Miller, Robert Bob Miller, George Morgan, Raisa Nachshin, Paul Nesbitt, Joyce Olin, Joel Ostro, Susan Paquel, Arnold Palmer, Michael Rakoz, Gail Maurice Reingold, Enid Reiser, Molly Loomer Rimoch, Louis Rosen, Ruth Rosenberg, John Rosenfield, Joseph Rosner, Philip Rubin, Efim Rudin, Gloria Ruth, Irene Saltzman, Thomas Sarnoff.
Carolyn Scher, Ronald Schiff, Daisy Schott, Jerome Schwartz, Joan Schaffran, Max Schaftal, Fran Schanbrom, Ronnie Shapiro, Mordechai Schlush, Dahlia Schneider, Larry Schulman, Norman Siegel, Hillel Silverman, Stanley Simon, Joyce Slayton, Stanley Stojal, Tamara Stolyarski, Clara Stovitz, Patsy Sultan, Richard Sutkin, Dina Taslet, Norma Temkin, Naum Tickman, Susanna Tsitsabi, Gerald Norman Tuck, Joan Vogel, Gail Weiner, Jerry Weiser, Jean Weiss, Sarah Del Weiss Riskind, Martin Weitz, Stacy Wernick, Jay Weston, Elaine Wexler, Jacqueline Weinberg, Sydney Weinberg, David Wolf, Linda Wolf, Judy Wunsch, Sandra Sandy Zuer. We pause now for a few moments of time with our loved ones who are gone but so very present. We bring them into our hearts now in moments of Yizkor. Let's turn now to page 598. We rise for El Molei Rachamim.
El Molei Rachamim Shochein Bamromim Hametzei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanefei HaShechinah B'mahalot Kedoshim u'tohorim Kezohar Arakiya Kezohar Arakiya Mazerim לנשמות יקירנו שהלכו לעולמם. בעל הרחמים יסתירם בסתר כנפיו לעולמים. ויצרור בישרור החיים את נשמתם. אדוני הוא נחלתם, וינוחו בשלום על משכבם, ונאמר
Merciful God, God Most High, let there be perfect rest for the souls of our loved ones who have gone into eternity. May they find shelter in your presence among the holy and pure, whose light shines like the radiance of heaven. Compassionate God, hold them close to you forever. May their souls be bound up in the bond of life eternal. May they find a home in you. And may they rest in peace. And together we say, Amen. We turn now to page 606. We join together in Kaddish. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah ve'alma divra chirutei ve'amlich malchutei v'chayechon uve'yomechon uve'chayei dechol beit Yisrael ba'agala u'vizman kariv ve'imeru Yehei shmei rabbah mevorach leolam u'almei almaya Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shemei dekudsha b'richu le'ela u'le'ela mikol birchata v'shirata tushvechata v'nechemata da'amiran ba'alma v'imeru Yehei shalom rabba min shemaya V'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imeru. Oseh shalom bimromav, u'yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imeru. Amen. You can be seated.
Oh, bring us to your holy mountain and make us joyful in your house of prayer. I will bring you to my holy mountain and make them joyful in my house of prayer. Their offering shall be accepted upon
We're continuing with Neilah, our last service of today. The day is ending, and we still have deep prayers asking for forgiveness and asking for our relationship with God. We continue on page 624 with the Amidah. Please rise.
Baruch atah Adonai,
Baruch Hu, Baruch Shemot.
Eloheinu v'Elohei Avoteinu v'Imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Leah, Elohei Rachel. Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Melech Chasadim Tovim, V'Kanei Hakol, V'Zocher Chasdei Avot ve'imachot, U'mevii Gevorah mibnei bneihem, Lema'an Shemo be'ahava, Zochrenu l'chaim, Melech hafetz b'chaim, V'chodmeinu eSefer HaChaim, Lemancha Elohim Chaim, Melech Ozer u'Moshiach u'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai.
Baruch Hu, Baruch Shemot.
Magen Avraham ve'ezrat Sarah. Ata gibor le'olam Adonai, Michayei Hakol ata Rav le'Hoshia. Mechaker Chaim b'chesed, Mechayei Hakol b'rachamim rabim, Somech noflim v'rofech orim, U'matir asurim, U'mekayim emunato l'shenei afar. Mi chamocha Ba'al Gevurot u'midom erach, Melech beimit u'mechayeh u'matzmiach Yeshua. Mi chamocha Rachamim, Zocher Yetzurah lechaim berachamim. Baruch atah
page 629. Open gate. The arc of evening slowly turning. The sun's blue shadows washed away. The gate still open as 3 stars wait to pierce the sky. In the corridor where light bears its maze, you begin to begin again.
Pitulanu sha'aret tzedek navavam nodeya. Pitulanu sha'aret tzedek navavam nodeya. Pitulanu sha'aret tzedek navavam nodeya. Pitulanu sha'aret tzedek navavam nodeya.
We continue in the middle of page 638. Favor us with words of deliverance and mercy. Show us the depth of your care. God, we await your redemption, for you reign with grace and compassion.
So
We enter the final Vidui section of our entire holiday, beginning on page 652. One more opportunity for us to be honest with ourselves. So I ask you to please rise. Let's join in the English in the middle of page 652. We are insolent, but you are compassionate and gracious. We are stubborn and stiff-necked, but you are slow to anger. We persist in doing wrong, but you are the essence of mercy. Our days are a shadow passing by, but you are existence itself, your years never ending. Page 653.
Ay, 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 Ashanu,
Ashanu,
Bagadnu,
Bagadnu,
Gazalenu,
Gazalnu,
Dibarnu Dofi,
Dibarnu Dofi,
Hevinu,
Hevinu,
Vehirshanu,
Vehirshanu,
Zadnu,
Zadnu,
Chamasnu,
Chamasnu,
Tafanu Sheker,
Tafanu Sheker,
ay, 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 Yatsnura,
Yatsnura,
Kizavnu,
Kizavnu,
Latsnu,
Latsnu,
Maradnu,
Maradnu,
Nyatsnu,
Yatsnu,
Sararnu,
Sararnu,
Avinu,
Avinu,
Pashanu,
Hashanu,
Sararnu,
Sararnu,
Kishinu Oref,
Kishinu Oref,
ay, 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 Rashanu,
Rashanu,
Shichatnu,
Shichatnu,
Tiavnu,
Tiavnu,
Tainu,
Tainu,
Titanu,
Titanu. The translation together. Of these wrongs we are guilty. We betray, we steal, we scorn, we act perversely, we are cruel, we scheme, we are violent, we slander, we devise evil, we lie, we ridicule, we disobey, we abuse, we defy, we corrupt, we commit crimes, we are hostile, we are stubborn, we are immoral, we kill, we spoil, We go astray, we lead others astray.
In a moment, the final Avinu Malkeinu. Avinu Malkeinu, the gates are closing, the evening is almost upon us. We need to speak our words aloud so the universe hears them. We get caught in old patterns and paradigms. We have missed the mark more than we want to admit. Forgive us, Avinu Malkeinu, source of all being, for the sins we have sinned against you. Help us know ourselves. Help us feel in our bones we are forgiven. Remind us we are already at one with you. We will continue on page 662.
Avinu Malkeinu, kabel berachamim uvratzon et tefilateinu.
Avinu Malkeinu, almighty and merciful, welcome our prayer with love, accept and embrace it.
Avinu Malkeinu, aseh leman rachamecha harabim.
Avinu Malkeinu, act for the sake of your boundless compassion.
Avinu Malkeinu, aseh imanu leman shemecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, act toward us as befits your name.
Avinu Malkeinu, chotmeinu b'sefer parnasa v'chalkala.
Avinu Malkeinu, seal us in the book of sustenance and livelihood.
Avinu Malkeinu, chodmeinu b'sefer zechuyot.
Avinu Malkeinu, seal us in the book of worthiness and merit.
Avinu Malkeinu, chodmeinu b'sefer selicha u'mechila.
Avinu Malkeinu, seal us in the book of forgiveness and pardon.
Avinu Malkeinu, chodmeinu b'sefer chaim tovim.
Avinu Malkeinu, seal us in the book of lives well lived.
Avinu Malkeinu, chotmeinu b'sefer geula v'yeshua.
Avinu Malkeinu, seal us in the book of redemption and renewal.
Avinu Malkeinu, malei yadeinu mi birchotecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, let our hands overflow with your blessings.
Avinu Malkeinu, petach sharei shamayim litfilateinu.
Avinu Malkeinu, let the gates of heaven be open to our prayer.
Avinu Malkeinu, chadesh aleinu shana tova.
Avinu Malkeinu, renew us for a year of goodness.
Avinu Malkeinu, en lanu menachelota.
Avinu Malkeinu, we have no sovereign but you.
Avinu Malkeinu, choneinu v'aneinu, ki ein banu masim, aseh imonu tzedakah v'chesed v'hoshienu.
Avinu Malkeinu, almighty and merciful, answer us with grace when our deeds are wanting. Save us through acts of justice and love.
Avinu Malkeinu, choneinu v'aneinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Baneinu, baneinu, yein banu masim. Aseimanu, tzedaka v'chesed. Aseimanu, tzedaka v'chesed, v'oshienu. Avinu malkeinu, chaneinu baneinu. Avinu malkeinu, chaneinu baneinu, yein banu masim.
Top of page 667. We read together. To live life in all its fullness is to stand in awe before an open gate, to gaze into a doorway of hope, a wondrous portal of possibilities. Many are the gates of our lives, many the treasures towards which they lead. But how many close behind us, lost, forgotten, and sealed forever? How many gates? How many years? Standing in awe before the gates of a new year, we see its most precious gift, the minutes and the hours, the days and the weeks, the treasure house of time. Every moment is a vessel of infinite holiness. Every morning, noon, and night is a gateway to life's immensity. How will we use this precious gift? We continue on page 668 with Kaddish Shalem.
יתקדש ויקדש שמי רבה. אמן. ועלמא תברח חירותי וימליך מלכותי. בחיי כל וביום אחד ובחיי דכל בית ישראל בעגלה ובזמן קריב. אמרו אמן. אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך ועליו עולדי עלמיה יתברך 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 ונשתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשא לעילא ולעילא מכל ברכתה ושירתה דרוש וחתה ונחמתה דאמירם בעלמא דרוש וחתה ונחמתה דאמירם בעלמא תתקבץ לאותם ובתכון לכל ישראל קדם מבואר די בשמיא די בשמיא די בשמיא אמן השלמה רבה מן שמיא בחיים בחיים עלינו עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל ישראל אמרו אמן אמן עשה שלום במרומיו הוא יעשה שלום עלינו עלינו ועל כל ישראל אמרו We rise as we open the ark for the final set of Shema, Baruch Shem, Adonai Hu Elohim. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Vaed. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Vaed. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Vaed. Adonai Hu Elohim. Adonai Hu Elohim. Adonai Hu Elohim. Adonai Hu Elohim. Adonai Hu Ya Gidula.
Everyone, please feel free to come a little closer and join us for Havdalah. We're all going to come down off the bima.
La 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 la
do, after the candle's extinguished, we're not going to go right into Eliyahu HaNavi because we're going to hear a word from Scott Edelman, and after that we'll go into Eliyahu HaNavi and Shavua Tov and Oseh Shalom.
הנבדיל בין קודש לחול, חטאותינו ימחול, זרענו וכספנו יאבד כחול, והכוכבים בלילה.
Scott?
This is a profound moment for so many reasons for us tonight. But in particular, I want to say on behalf of our congregation, a tremendous thank you to our senior cantor, Don Gurney, for 20 years, 23 years, but who's counting? Very small token of appreciation for you, Don, from our congregation. It's a season ticket pass, if you would call it that, to the Los Angeles Opera for you and Nancy for the next year. Because we hear you like to sing.
And for those of you who may not know, we have Sybil Fields with us here, who in many ways is the reason I came to Wilshire Boulevard Temple. Because when the board was deciding whether or not it would go to me or some other rabbi, they told Sybil to take me out to dinner. And I told Sybil that I had a really interesting offer in Miami Beach, and I always loved Miami Beach. Sybil set me straight, and here we are today. Aliyah, a sweet new year to everyone.
Shana Tova, 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 Shana Tova. A good year, a year of peace, may gladness reign and joy increase. A good year, a year of peace, may gladness reign. David, im Mashiach ben David, Eliyahu HaNavi, Eliyahu HaTishbi, Eliyahu, Eliyahu, Eliyahu HaGiladi. Oseh Shalom bimromah. Shana Tova. Shana Tova.
Mama. Shana Tova. In a healthy year.